welcome everybody to our live stream event today. The session is going to be about 30 minutes and then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. My name is Sophie. I'm going to be the host of today's live stream. I've been at SoPro for a year and I work day to day in the customer success department, strategizing and implementing the multi-channel campaigns. So I'll be chiming into this live stream and giving some real world contextual insights along with the insights provided by our speakers today. Now, we're all here because we know outreach has gotten harder in the last couple of years. I'm sure a lot of people have experienced something similar. Despite all of your hard work, meticulous preparation, you send out messages and then silence. You get ghosted, and sometimes it feels like there is a literal black hole that is swallowing your messages before they reach your prospects. So here's what we're going to cover today. Exactly why outreach is failing in 2025, and offer some real practical takeaways that address those challenges. And we'll look at ways to make your outbound strategy more engaging and effective in the long term. A lot of the insights that are coming today will be from our latest State of Prospecting report. We surveyed over 400 B2B decision makers and analysed 119 million multi-channel touchpoints to uncover what is really going on. It's the largest report of its kind, and this is the 4th year that we've had it running. If anything today sparks your interest, don't worry, we will follow up with the State of Prospecting report alongside a recording of today's call. So let me introduce our speakers. First off, we have Kit Smith from our marketing team. The State of Prospecting report was actually written by Kit, so he spent over 200 hours working on it by setting survey questions, working with the research teams, collaborating with data teams, analysing the findings, and speaking to our in-house experts. So in short, he knows this report inside out. If there is a stat, a trend, or a takeaway in there, Kit is going to be the one to tell you where it comes from and why. Joining Kit today, we have Steve Harlow. Steve has been in sales for 20 years, starting on the front lines and working his way up to the strategic role of Chief Sales Officer. So he's done it all, from cold calling to leading multiple sales teams. And having spent the last 9 years at SoPro developing the prospecting approach and leading our own sales team, Steve is in a really unique position. He's seen firsthand what works, what doesn't, what's changed, and how to build a process that consistently brings in new business. Oh, and he's joining us live from Brazil. So Before we start, I wanted to just ask a question to you, our audience. If you want to put it in the chat or you can message me directly, we want to know what are the challenges that you are facing at the moment in your outreach. As I said, pop your answers in the chat or feel free to message me and we will go over them at the end of the event. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Steve. Steve, take it away.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live stream today. We've actually got a pretty simple agenda, but hopefully you'll still find it packed with a load of useful insights and some practical takeaways. So first of all, we're going to cover what exactly has made outreach harder. There isn't a single reason. It's a mix of a number of different changes all adding up, but we'll break down 4 key areas that have shaped the landscape and made things more challenging. Following that, we'll cover what you can actually do about it. So we've identified 5 key areas that you can focus on. We'll outline the theory behind each one, how it works in practice, and what that looks like in real-world prospecting. And as Sophie said, we'll hopefully have a little time at the end for some Q&A. So it's no surprise that prospecting is harder than it used to be. It's a widely spoken topic. We're obviously very familiar with it here at SoPro. In fact, 45% of companies, they say generating enough leads is currently the #1 business challenge. But the real issue isn't just that it's hard, it's understanding why it's actually become harder. Because if you don't know the detail behind what's changed, then you can't go about fixing it. So with that said, we're going to dive straight into the challenges. And for that, I'll pass over to Kit to run through them.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah, hello, everyone. So we've got four sort of groups of challenges today. All of these things came about, we uncovered them during the state of prospecting research. There's quite a few of them, so we've kind of grouped them into these four different areas. And the first big shift we're going to talk about is email. So for years, for forever, it's been the standout channel for B2B outreach, and it's still a really key player. It's still kind of the foundation of outreach, but things have definitely changed. So in the last year alone, campaigns that rely solely on email have seen the lead rates drop by 29%. And the reasons behind that are sort of a few things coming together. So the number of businesses using email outreach has just absolutely exploded. And I'm sure a lot of us can kind of attest to that kind of with our own inboxes. And they are more crowded than ever. And that kind of ultimately, that competition means that results have sort of taken a hit. And, that would be bad enough, but it led some businesses to just massively ramp up the volume of their outreach, like huge volumes of outreach and really low lead rates, bad targeting, bad practice. Don't do it. But that sort of didn't go unpunished, and Google and Yahoo and other service providers sort of tightened their rules on like bulk senders, like business senders, basically. And that basically in turn made deliverability a serious challenge for kind of anyone using email. So yeah, it's not only harder technically, but the results are lower too. Bit of a double whammy. Challenge 2 is all sort of based around market conditions. So this came through really clear in the research for the state of prospecting. 65% of our panel said budgets are tighter than they were. And that obviously makes buyers more cautious, and the fear of messing up, like for you as an individual in your role, kind of becomes a big motivator. So you feel the pressure to make the right decision, and that means people take longer, they involve more stakeholders, they consider more options. It just slows everything down, right? So it's not, and it's not just buyers that told us this. There was 45% of vendors said that they're facing increased competition throughout the process as well. Our third challenge is around changing buyer behavior. So that's largely as a response to those kind of market conditions. And more people than ever before influence decisions, as I touched upon. So it's now up to an average of 4.14. It's increased for the third year in a row. That's just as long as we've been sort of tracking it as part of the report. And that's more people that you need to convince. Crucially, it's more internal conversations that happen behind closed doors, and you're not there to argue your case. And in addition to that, a third of buyers demand a more personalized experience. And I think something to remember is, yeah, your potential client is a company, but it's the people in them that are making those decisions. And we are all used to kind of sleeker, more personalized experiences in our daily lives as kind of B2C consumers. It's just that increasingly people are expecting that in the B2B world as well. And so our last challenge, or challenges, I should say, kind of all revolve around timing. So touched on this already, but 35% of our survey panel said deals are taking longer to close. And again, there's more decision makers, there's more scrutiny, there's more internal back and forth, all of that kind of contributing to slow it down. And 32% also said that they experienced deals going silent. So yeah, you think everything's going well and you get ghosted again, never to be heard from. So yeah, that's another one. But another thing I want to talk about, it's not from the state of prospecting, but we can't really talk about timing without considering the 95-5 rule. So if you don't already know this, research has shown that at any given time, 95% of your audience are not actively looking to buy, right? So they don't have an immediate need for your products. They're just not in market, and there's nothing you can do to convince them. It's not a new idea, as I say, but it's clearly has to be a factor kind of in our strategy going forward, because how you engage that 95% today then defines your success going forward in the months and years ahead. So that's a quick overview of kind of all the challenges that we've uncovered this year. And now we're going to unbox some solutions. So I'll pass back over to Steve for the first one.
Thank you, Kip. So starting with the good news, these challenges don't mean that prospecting is broken. Outreach still works. but how you do it matters more than ever. Now, in fact, almost 90% of buyers still want you as the vendor to reach out to them. The catch with this is that what they will expect is that it's relevant, timely, and aligned to how they want to buy from you. So the real challenge today isn't getting in front of your buyers, it's making sure that you actually engage with them in the right way. So if we take a look at the various changes and challenges, there are a few areas we think best to focus on. We've grouped them into 5 key areas, and each one can actually address multiple of these challenges. So over the next few slides, we'll break down each one, covering why it works, how you can put it into practice, and we'll also add a bit of real world insight for each one as well. So first up, engaging all the decision makers. As Kit mentioned, the average B2B deal now involves multiple stakeholders, each with their own priorities and concerns. That means if you're only targeting one person per company, you're leaving the rest of the whole buying committee out of the conversation, or you're relying on the prospect you're talking to get them all involved, which really represents a huge missed opportunity. So engaging multiple people within a company, it allows you to achieve a number of things. So first off, you increase your visibility across all the people that matter. Both you and your brand become a lot more memorable among the buyer committee. It will increase the chance of actually being included within internal discussions, which is so important in every aspect of the sales process. Topics that aren't being actively spoken about, they'll quickly get forgotten about. So you really want to be in the room when you're not physically in the room. If you can then obviously become a topic of conversation, your chance of getting a response from that buying committee or that group will massively improve. And then also one thing to think about is in the larger companies, it can help create potential for multiple deals rather than just working with one set business area. From a practical standpoint, engaging with the buying committee should be split up into 2 sections. So first, you've got your ICP, or your ideal client profile, or ideal companies you want to work with, and then the prospects that fit your buyer profile within these companies. Of course, that also means you need to have identified your ideal customer profile, which usually helps to focus on the companies you're best at selling to, or the ones that end up being the best customers for you. So you've got your ICP. From that, you need to actually go and build your list. There are a few ways you could do this. You could do manual research online. You've got databases like LinkedIn. You can go on Google. There's lots of public databases out there. You could engage in a bit of web scraping, which is a bit more technical. You can often pull more data at a higher rate by doing this, but normally it's a practice that data companies tend to do to build or compile all the data required for you. And so normally the other option is that you could buy a list from one of those data providers, or you could use a SaaS platform that also provides data. Final option is you could use a specialist agency to do all the above for you. Of course, it's not practical with the current resources to be doing this in-house. How much you're actually able to refine that list really depends on how you collected your data. So you've got basic segmentation, which will include firmographics such as the sectors or industries, the location of the people or the businesses, and roughly what sort of size of organization, usually by headcount. The next level up will include things like the revenue of the business or funding, tech stack, so the sort of technologies they're using internally, perhaps hiring trends. And then finally, beyond that, you can use AI to identify some really niche segments that standard filtering just doesn't capture. So as an example, we worked with a company targeting industrial greenhouse manufacturers. Not an industry you can just select from a drop-down menu. But since we actually scrape companies' websites and summarize that content as part of our database, we're able to use AI to analyze that data and find these specific manufacturers, whilst making sure we also excluded businesses like similar ones, compost suppliers or indoor farms that would normally come up in that search. And that level of precision wasn't really possible until recently. So we've got a total addressable market for the ICP, the ideal companies you want to go out to. The next step is identifying and finding the right people within those businesses. And again, this could be manual or an automated process. It really comes down to your preference of how you want to run this. Personally, I'd always lean towards avoiding as many manual steps as you can. There's always going to be require a bit of human QA, but if a task is repetitive, you want to find a way to automate that. Then you've got to decide which roles to include. So how do you do that? It will depend on your business. The data in your CRM is often a good starting point. From there, you can test and learn. Hopefully, you've also got a bit of an idea around the typical people that would buy from you as a user, people that get involved with the sale, decision makers. We can always help with that as well, but you should have a good idea of those people. And if I give you an example of Sopro, we would have often a typical buyer might be head of sales or head of business development, but we're not talking about them deciding to just buy a new pen. This is a bigger decision. So normally there's other stakeholders involved when we're talking to an organization, and that could be marketing leaders. Quite often finance want to get involved because they want to see what the budgets are and ROI and what they're going to get back. Normally there's also some involvement from the CEO or the company founders if they have a say on purchasing decisions. IT and infrastructure often like to have their say when it comes to any sort of integration. As soon as we mention things like email and CRM, they want to pipe in. And then legal as well is another department that we often end up coordinating with and speaking to, usually further along in the sale. But again, if you've done some sort of brand awareness activity, so they're more familiar with you as a business from the start, that just helps you with it's the familiarity really is the main thing. So, a fairly large potential buying committee from our side. And of course, each one of these people, they can influence the decision in different ways. So add in anyone who could play a role in the decision-making process, and then make sure you tailor your outreach to those people accordingly. So at this point, I thought we'd bring Sophie back just to give us a bit of insight from the real world using her experience working on our client campaigns.
Thanks, Steve. So just to show this actually in action, this table shows real Sopro campaign results broken down by company size, and it highlights that focusing on individual prospects can sometimes be misleading. So the left column shows the sizes of the companies contacted, right from your one-man bands to your enterprise clients. The middle column shows the results listed as leads per prospect. And if you look at this, the implication is actually that you shouldn't bother going after the big fish, right? But the final column shows the same results, but listed as leads per company. And now the story gets flipped on its head. The bigger companies actually lead to more leads. And leads in bigger companies, as we know, can eventually lead to bigger deal sizes as well. One client recently said to me that outreach is a conversation starter. The initial introductions are about finding someone who is open to having a conversation. And she also said that she doesn't often start by talking to the final decision maker, but good conversations will lead them to them over time. And being referred up the chain is, of course, exactly what we want. So, Steve, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. So let's talk about the tech setup required. Right, there's two key parts of this. First, email is still at the heart of modern outreach, and deliverability is key to making that part successful. You could spend countless hours improving your subject line, your email copy, and curating your perfect call to action. But really, if the email doesn't land in the inbox, none of that is actually going to matter. The second element is enabling the multi-channel side. Your other outreach channels should be built on top of and coordinated with your email campaigns, which will create a joined up communication experience for your prospects. But delivering multi-channel outreach at scale is where this becomes really complex. But once you've spent all the time needing to just identify the various tools that you want to use in the first place, then going about integrating them together can be quite a technical endeavor. The two aspects are the foundation of delivering your messages. Without them, outreach just isn't really effective. So for multi-channel, you'll need a whole load of specialist tech. We see posts on LinkedIn all the time that show really seriously complex tech stacks, and then the post says, all you got to do is sync up these 27 tools. Sounds simple. It's a bit like saying you want to draw a really good detailed picture of a horse, draw a unicorn, take away the horn. Reality is it's really, really hard to do. So just to set up your email, you'll need a host of tools to get it working and to continually test different approaches. I've been told all this by our tech team because I like to get involved, but it's not really my area of expertise. But you've got providers like your domain provisioning, domain warm-up, email verification systems, sending platforms, even gifting platforms if you want to include some sort of nice offer in your outreach, coffee, for example. And then you need to apply things like the DNS settings, which DKIM, SPF configuration, blacklist monitoring, domain rotation. Yeah. I could go on. It's all things that I like to pretend I understand, but yeah, tech team have told me they really are key to making sure the configuration is right in the first place to help get your emails landing in the inbox. I'll actually pass over to Sophie again from some insight, really from a client perspective about this.
Sure, thanks, Steve. You're right. The reality is that there is no one way to make this simple. You either need to hire a tech genius or find a provider that takes care of it all. So just imagine what you would need internally. So you would need a dedicated email deliverability resource, a person or a team whose sole job it is to test and improve the email setup. High quality data, so fresh data, custom targeting. You will need to combine and synchronize all these different platforms together. And you'll also need all of the tech to feed this into one place so you can report on your campaign as a whole and not just part of it. So a lot of the clients that we work with tell us that they appreciate having everything under one roof in one centralized system. And some of the best practice we'll cover today would not be possible without this level of tech. Back to Steve again for our next point.
Thank you. So we touched on it there with the tech, but our third key area we're going to look at is multi-channel. Outbound, it used to be much simpler. Single channel outreach, mostly email. It was enough to engage with your buyers and start initial conversations. Generally, buyers had simpler processes internally to make their purchasing decisions. And you can actually run outreach as a standalone activity, which allows you to sort of pause and restart quite easily. Quite often, you might have the sales team doing this themselves. And really, new sales opportunities were quick and relatively easy to generate. Well, at least easier than they are today. Now, with the changes we've seen, your outreach needs to evolve as well. And multi-channel isn't really a nice to have anymore. We've seen it has a significant impact on the results. 75% of people say that multi-channel outreach activity outperforms single-channel campaigns. Really, I think it should be 100%. I can't see the argument for the other 25. But to be clear, multi-channel isn't actually a new thing. It's more new in B2B outreach. The aim is really to catch up with the sophistication of inbound marketing. It's also not about spamming people everywhere nonstop. It's about creating consistent, relevant touch points that all work together. It's the need for this sophisticated approach is why the technical side gets so hard. So it's about creating coordinated opportunities across channels, which boost awareness and recall. But it also would actively create opportunities for buyers to respond or to reach out and talk to sales. And in terms of those touch points and how that can look, Sophie's going to give you a real world example.
Thank you. This is just, as Steve said, a real world example of a customer journey, and so that you can see the multiple touch points that are needed to get meetings booked. So, for example, on the 10th of the first email got delivered, and then a connection request was sent about 3 days later. That connection request was accepted, but still no engagement was happening. The email then got clicked on that same day. 3 days later, they went onto the homepage of that client, and a LinkedIn message then got sent back to the client. So the email was delivered a second time, then a web goal is hit again from a case study a few days later, another email goes out, and then finally, nearly over a month afterwards, the email is actually received back to the client and a meeting gets booked. Just to give you a real world example of how these multi-channel touch points will work together. Steve, back to you.
It's actually me that's going to take over now.
Okay,
I know Steve's been doing a lot so far, but yeah, my turn. So yeah, thanks, Sophie. So yeah, our fourth kind of focus area is about delivering outreach that's relevant and tailored and well timed. And the kind of beauty of this is no matter your level of sophistication with your tech, with your kind of experience, you can always improve your messaging with segmentation, right? So you tailor your outreach with like for specific challenges that are faced by industry or by role. So, you know, CFOs are going to care about ROI, head of sales want pipeline growth. You know, that's a really solid way to kind of make messaging more relevant. But AI can take that concept much further. With the more sophisticated data collection methods, you've got a lot more information about kind of each prospect in your audience. And if you feed that information into the right AI tool, you can start to create tailored content at scale. And not only that, but AI is really useful at actioning like real-time insights. And we'll get to that in a second. But I think the key thing that I'd want to emphasize about sort of outreach and AI together is it is not about sending more outreach. It's about making your existing sort of volume of outreach more targeted, more relevant, and ultimately more effective. But personalization and AI is only kind of half the equation of what we're talking about here, and timing is just as important. So the theory on this one is kind of fairly logical. Outreach works best when it reinforces kind of active ongoing interest rather than interrupting people at the wrong time. And it's buyer intent signals that kind of can show us that moment. So if the prospect's interacting with the campaign or your website, that can be a sign that they're researching you and they're moving from that kind of awareness phase into the more consideration evaluation stage. And practically speaking, these signals kind of come from these three areas we've got on screen. So in your campaigns, you can track specific prospects with the right tech. And that's what Sophie's just showed us, you know, very detailed level of what's activities happening. You've also then got IP match technology. So that turns anonymous website visitors into sort of known companies. Yeah, it won't work when people are working from home unless they're on a VPN, but you still kind of get a good, I don't know, it's something like 40 or 50% or something of visits can be turned into companies. And then the last one I've got here is company intelligence. So it's sort of slightly different. It's not that same kind of level of intent that individuals are taking, but you've got stuff like kind of funding rounds and key hires or department growth or something like that. Still can be really useful sort of signals to help you personalize things and get the timing right. So putting that into practice, I'm going to continue with intent first, and then we'll move back to AI. So with company level intent, the kind of issue is you need to find that way, to find your own way of kind of converting the company level stuff into what are the relevant prospects I can speak to here. So again, a sort of example from the real world, the way we do it at SoPro, we'll take the list of companies that visit our site, and then we narrow that down to just the companies that fit our ideal customer profile. And then we'll go through that list and we'll find all of the prospects within those companies that are the kind of potential SoPro decision makers and buyers. Obviously, you know, head of sales and marketing and business development that Steve talked about before. So we make that list and then we reach out to all of them. And we don't know which one it was. But if we catch if we catch the person who came to the site, amazing, that's perfect. But even if we don't, what we've done is messaged all of the potential decision makers in a relevant company. Great. It might be one that we didn't previously know about. It is one that looks like it could be in the market for solutions just based on the fact they've kind of come to our site. And, you know, if that is the case, then they may well be having internal sort of discussions among that kind of very group that we've just contacted. And prospects level intent is just much simpler. You know exactly who it is, you know what they've been looking at. You can set alerts for the kind of high intent activity, so you're not looking at absolutely everything that happens. And when you kind of get alerts like that, you want to reach out quickly when you're notified, whether that's kind of email or LinkedIn or a phone call. You're aiming to send the right message at the right time to the right person. So that's intent. And then the other part of this section, to kind of like go back, I appreciate there's a lot here, is concerning AI. So AI content, it's obviously like a really big opportunity, but it's also a big risk. And like it's just a tool, right? AI, and it is only as good as what you feed into it and what you use it for. If you ask ChatGPT or some equivalent tool to just write you an outreach message, the problem is it doesn't know the specific kind of best practice behind outreach. So it doesn't know all the kind of rules that you build up from doing it yourself. It doesn't know your campaign and your prospects and everything. So you have to kind of be cleverer with that. Otherwise, you end up with generic messaging. And basically that is the exact noise that we're trying to kind of rise above in the battle in the inbox. So good AI content has got to start with those kind of specific prospecting content rules. So the message structure, the length, the rules around CTAs or language, or there's all sorts of stuff that you can include. And then that kind of gives you that framework. Once you've got the framework, you feed in that information about you as the sender and your tone of voice and information about your prospect, any kind of previous engagement history between the two of you. And if you do that for every email, that's when you can kind of get this genuine personalization at scale and really kind of get the most out of AI. And so this is our fifth and final kind of section of the solutions. Is it's about setting up your outreach for that kind of like long-term success. So outbound marketing today, like it works best when it's an ongoing and active strategy. And if you think about your inbound marketing, it's a long-term game, right? There's content and social and newsletters. All of that activity is like building your brand and keeping you visible so that when buyers are ready to buy, they come to you. And outbound should just complement that. Like one pulls, the other pushes, but they're kind of working in tandem. And the difference, I think, from our point of view of outbound is that, you're directly speaking to people. So you need to be there and be responsive to sort of continue that conversation. I do think as well, it's important to say at this point that, yeah, there are challenges, that have been faced, but outbound still does deliver like those immediate kind of short-term leads that, every business needs. You send a great email or a LinkedIn message, whatever it is, you happen to grab someone at the right time, chances are they're going to be like, yeah, well, I'm researching stuff. This is good timing. Let's have a chat. But with this sort of active ongoing approach, those results can kind of continue to ramp up in the long term. So I sort of alluded to this before, but if you think of outbound as starting a conversation, any conversations are back and forth, right? And outbound, I would say, has traditionally been kind of bad at picking up some of the signals that mean you should respond to that conversation. So that's what this section is all about. First of all, don't turn your campaigns off. Short bursts of outreach. It just means you lose visibility and momentum. You disappear while buyers are in mid-conversation. That might be conversation with you, but it might be conversations that are happening internally that you're not privy to. Second is to respond to every reply, right? And this is something we tell clients all the time. I'm sure Sophie can back me up on this one, but even if the answer is no thanks, like every response is the start of a conversation. They didn't need to reply to you. They could have just ignored it, deleted the email, deleted the LinkedIn message. It's a potential opportunity for you. So, research them a bit more, be more personalized with your kind of follow-up, really kind of dig into why you can help them. And you never know, like people do turn them around. We do, our clients do, if you just take that kind of approach. And, it's just polite, isn't it? It's not going to do you any harm to just get back to someone and say, thanks for the message. So next is to act on intent signals quickly. So when you get those kind of notifications that a prospect's showing interest, speed really matters. Like you need to reach out while they're still thinking about you. And that's minutes, not sort of hours of days. To really kind of catch them in that right moment. And I think it's worth saying as well that intent is good for the long term of your campaigns. Like if as you're building your intent pool over time and you're bringing more relevant people into your sort of orbit, you're then in a position to engage them and monitor that intent and, reach out when the right time arrives. So fourth is nurturing your leads. Obviously, longer sales cycles demand this. And I'd say good interactions, keep you top of mind. And it's true before a conversion or a demo or whatever as it is afterwards. So yeah, again, example from SoPro, Steve's team obviously uses like email and Slack and phone calls to stay in touch with people, but we've also got a kind of digital sales room software. So it's like a content hub for potential clients once they've had a demo. Everything they might need is in there. We can track their engagement. We can kind of offer more stuff through that, as well as those traditional sort of methods. And our sort of last point on this one is just to not ignore your brand. So I think marketing obviously creates inbound leads, right? It's kind of a big part of the point of it, but it also positively impacts your outbound. And it's sort of well proven that outreach results are better when prospects are familiar with your brand. And it's something we actually do and offer at SoPro, is that we sort of sync the prospects within a campaign. We sort of push that data into display ad platforms, and it helps kind of, there's more potential of them seeing those ads in the run up to them being kind of contacted by someone and having that brand recall and therefore responding more positively. So that's it for that one. Yeah, there's a lot in there, but hopefully that sort of helps to outline how you should approach it all. And back to Steve.
Thanks, Kip. So just before we dive into some questions with the Q&A, just want to recap and underline our 5 key takeaways. First off, engage all the decision makers to speak to more people that matter. Make sure you nail your technical setup to give your campaign the foundation and best chance for success. Engage across multiple channels, which will increase the visibility and meet buyers where they are and where they like to engage. Focus on personalization, timing, and relevance to reinforce your buyer's interest, and make outreach active and always on to align sales and marketing and create a steady flow of leads. It's a bit like, a salesperson should always be continuing to build their pipeline. If you take a break, it takes a lot longer to build it back up. There's almost unlimited aspects to outreach that you can test and optimize, but hopefully what we've run through today gives you a good idea of the areas you should hopefully look to prioritize. By the way, here's my contact details for anyone that wants to get in touch for a demo or discuss SoPro further, or a general question that we don't get through today. There's a lot more detail on the themes of today's event in the State of Prospecting. We'll send it out along with the recording, but if you just can't wait, then you can head to our website and download it now. You'll find it in a resources section. And I think we'll see if we've got some questions loaded up.
Sure. Thank you both. That's really, really useful. I just want to go back to the question that I posed at the start of the live stream. What challenges have people currently faced with their outreach? We got loads of responses, so thank you. Michael Brown said responses. John Alexander and Nicole Duckworth said ghosting. John Moss said poor or just no response, so that black hole taking effect. Hannah Taylor says conversions. Alistair, poor or no response, ghosting and conversions, so triple threat there. Ellie Wraith said post-pitch feedback. We have one person that said how to write cold emails so that recipients actually want to open. We do have resources on our website, sopro.io, in the resources section, which is packed with loads of resources to help you write those cold emails. John Osborne also said struggling to get responses or multi-layered decision-making processes. Hashem said what to include and ghosting. And Harry Venezia said inducing a response from an email target, so getting reply, whether positive or negative, just getting an answer is valuable. So hopefully we've answered some of your questions and thank you for your input. We've also got questions now that we're going to ask our 2 speakers today, Kit and Steve, so I hope you both are ready. This one is going to be for Steve. So Steve, is personalization still appreciated in the age of AI? AI can now craft better personalized message than most of us. What's your take on that?
I think whatever personalization you do, it's got to be genuine, because lots of people are using AI to um, pull through information that makes it seem like you've researched the prospect you're going out to. For example, oh, I read your last post on LinkedIn, and then going straight into why you're contacting them, no relevance there. And their last post on LinkedIn might have actually been last year, and they'll be like, "Well, thanks for digging up my post history." So personalization is still very, very important, but it needs to come from a place of it needs to be genuine and be connected to the reason you're reaching out. So, if you notice something about the person, maybe they're new in their role, maybe their role has recently changed. Maybe there's news about the business that's relevant to why you're reaching out. These are all things that you want to include, but don't just chuck it in there for argument's sake. You could say something about the fact that the town that they're in, which is, it's kind of nice, but there's a bit of an opener. But often the recipient will think, well, that's not. It's not really relevant to why you're reaching out, and you kind of ditch that part of it. So yeah, personalization, definitely do it, but just have a good reason and make sure it's pertinent to the outreach.
I think sort of related to that as well, people are quickly becoming more and more adept at spotting AI content, right? And what Steve talked about is a big part of that. When there's this kind of weird personalization that you're like, why have they mentioned that? That's got nothing to do with the rest of the message. Again, it just sort of starts to ring alarm bells, and yeah, people don't respond well to it.
Thank you both. So I had a couple of questions sent directly. So this one is for Kit. Why do you recommend replying to people who respond to your outreach negatively?
Manners. No, I think it genuinely is. I totally understand why people wouldn't think that you should do that, right? Like someone said no, leave them alone. But actually, obviously, you want to do it in the right way, and you sort of going to be polite and what have you. But yeah, it's an opportunity to kind of look into that person a bit more on that kind of like one-to-one level. Really kind of see if you can find anything about the company or about them that you can that you might be able to help with. And you can kind of be like, oh, okay, I appreciate it might not be the right time. I see maybe you're struggling with this, and I feel like we might be able to help you in this way. Maybe you can keep us in mind next time. And I know from speaking to clients that there are clients who put this process in place and kind of regularly kind of have conversations that might become something down the line, or it might actually kind of straight away be a conversation that kind of goes further. So yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
Thank you. We have a question that's just dropped from Olivia Burbeck. This one is for Steve. So what would be your top tip for an SME to start outreach, but without having a designated person for this, shared sort of between the marketing staff? Or yeah, what's your take on that, Steve?
That's a big question. Without knowing more about the setup there, it's hard to really answer that question. I think if there are some sort of technical knowledge and skills within the business, you could go out there and piece things together. But if there's a lack of resource to compile some sort of outreach process, when you look at all the constituent parts and the time spent, you are better off just going and outsourcing that part of it. I look at that if any business, if you can't do something effectively in-house, for example, counting, then just find something out there that can take that task completely away from you and leave you to carry on with what you're doing. So if it is a case of there definitely isn't the resource in-house, go externally, find an agency and run it with them. Because actually, if you try and muddle through, you'll spend more time maybe unsuccessfully setting up, or then getting it wrong when you do the outreach, and that can be more costly than the money you spend on an agency.
Thank you. So I think that might be all the time that we have for today. Sorry we couldn't get to everybody's questions. There were some really great comments in there, but we can pass on Steve's email address. I'm sure he's going to be typing away some answers for you, along with the recording and also the state of prospecting, which is what this live stream is based on. So again, thank you everybody for joining today. We hope this has been useful, and yeah, catch you on the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.